There's a kind of quiet that only comes in the early evening on a farm. The work is mostly done, the air starts to cool just a little, and if you're lucky, you get a few minutes to sit on the porch with a cup of coffee and just breathe.
That's where I was a few summers back when I first started thinking seriously about this problem. The mosquitoes had been bad that year, worse than usual. Every evening, without fail, the moment the sun dipped below the tree line, they came. Out of the woodpile, up from the low ground near the garden, drifting across from the pond at the edge of the property. It didn't matter if you'd sprayed, lit candles, plugged in one of those electric zappers. They came anyway. And if you had kids running around in the yard or animals you were trying to keep comfortable, it became more than just an annoyance. It became a real problem. I remember my grandfather sitting in almost this exact same spot decades earlier, swatting at the air and laughing to himself. I asked him once why he was laughing, and he said, "Because the mosquito doesn't know it's supposed to be afraid of me. It just knows what it wants. And until I figure out what it wants better than it does, it's going to keep winning." I didn't fully understand what he meant back then. I was young. I just wanted the bugs gone. But as I got older, that little piece of wisdom started to settle into me in a way I didn't expect. That summer, sitting on the porch, watching the purple martins swoop and dive over the garden, those remarkable little birds that eat hundreds of mosquitoes a day, I started thinking about my grandfather's words again. The martins weren't fighting the mosquitoes. They weren't frustrated. They weren't spraying chemicals or setting up electric grids. They had simply learned, over thousands of years, exactly how mosquitoes move, where they go, what they're drawn to, and they used that understanding to take them, one by one, with almost effortless precision. That's when it clicked for me. I'd been approaching this problem the wrong way my entire life. I'd been fighting mosquitoes. What I needed to do was think like one. Now, before I go any further, I want to be upfront with you about something. I believe in straight talk. My grandfather had a saying for that too. He called it honest yield. You don't promise a man 100 bushels if the field's going to give him 60. You tell him 60, you show him why it's worth planting, and if the season is good, maybe it comes in at 75 and everybody's happy. That's how trust gets built. Slowly, honestly, over time.
So, when I tell you about this mosquito trap, this incredibly simple, cheap, kitchen ingredients mosquito trap, I'm going to be straight with you. I'm not going to tell you it will eliminate every mosquito on your property overnight. I'm not going to use numbers that sound impressive but don't hold up in the real world.
What I am going to tell you is what I actually observed, what actually worked, and why I think the science and the old wisdom behind this are both pointing in exactly the same direction. The title of this video says 1,000 mosquitoes. And I'll be honest, that's a full season number. That's what I tracked carefully over the course of one summer, using a few of these traps placed in specific spots around my property. It is not one night, it is not one trap, but it is real. And when you understand how it works, you'll understand why that number is actually very conservative. If you want to trap something, you have to understand what drives it. That's true for fish, for deer, for any creature you're trying to outsmart. And mosquitoes, for all the misery they cause, are actually remarkably simple in what they want. First, let's clear up a common misunderstanding. Male mosquitoes don't bite. They feed on flower nectar. They're actually pollinators. The ones that are biting you, the ones leaving those itching welts on your ankles and arms, those are females. And they're not biting you out of aggression. They're biting you because they need the protein in your blood to develop their eggs. Every time a mosquito bites you, she's getting ready to lay another batch of 100 to 300 eggs somewhere nearby. This is important to understand because it means every female mosquito you trap is not just one mosquito. It's potentially hundreds of future mosquitoes that never get born. That's how a modest nightly count becomes 1,000 over season. You're not just catching bugs, you're breaking the cycle. Now, how do mosquitoes find you? They use several signals, and this is where the science gets genuinely fascinating, and where the old wisdom my grandfather talked about starts to make a lot of sense. Carbon dioxide is the primary signal. Every time you exhale, you release a plume of carbon dioxide that drifts downwind, and mosquitoes can detect it from up to 150 feet away. They follow that plume upwind until they find the source. That's you, or your animals, or, as we're going to use it, our trap. The second signal is heat. Mosquitoes can detect the warmth of a living body at close range. Combined with CO2, heat helps them zero in with precision.
The third signal is certain chemical compounds, lactic acid from sweat, certain skin bacteria, and other organic compounds that your body naturally produces. These are harder to replicate artificially, which is why simple repellents that just mask your smell are often inconsistent. The mosquito is following multiple signals, and blocking one doesn't always stop it.
But here's what we can work with. Carbon dioxide. Because there's a natural, safe, cheap, and surprisingly effective way to produce a steady stream of CO2, and it's been sitting in your pantry the whole time. Yeast. When yeast consumes sugar, it produces two things, alcohol and carbon dioxide. It's the same process that makes bread rise and beer ferment. It's been known for thousands of years. My grandfather used to make a simple fermented drink in a crock on the back porch every summer. He didn't think of it as chemistry, he just knew it worked. But that gentle, steady release of CO2 is exactly what a mosquito's sensory system is designed to follow. Add warm water to activate the yeast, give it sugar to feed on, and you have a CO2 generator that runs for days on its own. No battery, no electricity, no moving parts. Just biology doing what biology has always done. Now here's where we add the second layer of the trap. We want to lure the mosquito in and then make sure it doesn't come back out. And for that, we use something even simpler. Dish soap. Mosquitoes are very light. Their legs are designed to land on the surface of water without breaking through. That's how they lay eggs in still water. Normally, water's surface tension supports them, but a few drops of dish soap breaks that surface tension completely. The moment a mosquito lands on soapy water, it sinks. It cannot escape. So the trap has two mechanisms working together. The CO2 draws them in, and the soapy water surface finishes the job. No zapping, no poison, no UV light attracting every flying insect in the county and frying them all indiscriminately. Just a targeted, biology-based system that is specifically attractive to what we're trying to catch. Simple, elegant, cheap. This is what my grandfather meant when he talked about understanding the creature. Not overpowering it, understanding it. Everything you need is almost certainly already in your home. You'll need a large plastic bottle. A 2-liter soda bottle works perfectly, but any large bottle with a narrow neck will do. You'll need 1 cup of warm water, not hot, warm. Hot water will kill the yeast before it gets started. You'll need a 1/4 cup of sugar. Plain white sugar is fine, though brown sugar works well too, and some people swear it ferments more actively. You'll need a 1/4 teaspoon of active dry yeast, the kind you find in any grocery store, usually sold in small packets. And you'll need a few drops of dish soap, plain, unscented if possible, though any kind will work.
That is the entire ingredient list. We are probably talking about 50 cents worth of materials at most. $1 if you're being generous. Here's how you assemble it. Take your bottle and cut it roughly in half. Cut it about 2/3 of the way up from the bottom, so the bottom portion is larger than the top. Set the top portion aside for a moment. In the bottom half of the bottle, pour your warm water. Add the sugar and stir until it dissolves. This matters because undissolved sugar just sits at the bottom and the yeast can't access it as efficiently.
Then add your yeast. Don't stir too vigorously after this. You want the yeast to activate gently. Finally, add a few drops of dish soap and give it the gentlest of stirs, just enough to distribute it without creating a lot of bubbles. Now take the top half of the bottle, the part with the neck, and flip it upside down. Place it into the bottom half like a funnel. The narrow opening of the neck should be pointing downward into the liquid, but not touching it. You want a gap of 1 inch or 2 between the neck opening and the surface of the liquid. This funnel shape is important. Mosquitoes will fly down through the wide opening following the CO2, and then find it very difficult to navigate back up through the narrow neck to escape. Some people tape the two halves together at the seam. This is a good idea, especially if you're placing it outdoors where wind or animals might knock it around. And that's it. You're done. Set it in a shaded location. This is important. Direct sunlight heats the liquid too fast, speeds up fermentation too quickly, and shortens the life of your trap. You want a cool, shaded spot, near the woodpile, under the porch, in the shaded corner of the garden where the mosquitoes like to gather in the still air of the evening. The closer to where you've noticed mosquito activity, the better. The fermentation will be active and producing CO2 steadily for about 2 weeks. After that, the yeast has consumed most of the sugar and activity drops off. That's when you clean it out and make a fresh batch. Total cost per refill, about 50 cents. Total time to refill, about 5 minutes. Compare that to the pest control truck, the white truck that pulls up to your driveway and charges you $300 to $400 for a seasonal treatment that involves spraying chemicals across your entire yard, killing beneficial insects along with the mosquitoes, and leaving residue on your garden, your woodpile, your children's play area. I'm not saying those services have no place. I'm saying that for most households, this small, clever, honest solution does the job, and does it in a way that doesn't cost your family, your garden, or your peace of mind. Building the trap is the easy part. Placing it correctly is where the real skill comes in. And this is where the old farming wisdom matters more than any modern guidebook. My grandfather had a phrase for this too. He called it reading the land. Before you plant anything, before you set any trap, before you make any decision about your property, you walk it, you observe it, you notice where the water sits after rain, where the shade falls in the afternoon, where the air is still and where it moves. You let the land tell you what it's doing before you try to change anything about it. Mosquitoes are creatures of habit and environment. They rest in cool, shaded, humid spots during the day and become active in the evening when temperatures drop. They breed in standing water. Even a bottle cap full of water is enough for a female to lay eggs. They follow scent trails and CO2 plumes that travel with the prevailing wind. So before you place your traps, do what my grandfather would have done. Walk your property in the early evening. Notice where the mosquitoes seem heaviest. That low spot near the garden where water pools after rain. The shaded area under the big tree by the fence. The area around the woodpile where leaves have collected and hold moisture. These are your target zones. Place a trap within 15 to 20 feet of each of these zones. You want it close enough that the CO2 plume drifts into the area where mosquitoes are already active. But you also want it positioned slightly upwind of where you'll be sitting, so the trap is competing with you for the mosquito's attention and winning. Don't place it right next to your seating area. The idea is to draw the mosquitoes away from you, not to set up a trap that's already surrounded by people exhaling CO2 and confusing the signal. Shade is non-negotiable. A trap in full afternoon sun will ferment out within days. A trap in a cool, shaded spot will run efficiently for the full 2 weeks. If you have a garden, position traps at the perimeter rather than the center. You want to intercept mosquitoes on the way in, not after they've already arrived. For larger properties, 3 or 4 traps placed strategically will outperform 10 traps placed randomly. Coverage area matters less than placement quality. A single well-placed trap near a breeding site will catch dramatically more mosquitoes than 3 traps placed in open, sunny, low-activity areas. If you have structures that collect standing water, old tires, clogged gutters, bird baths that don't get refreshed, buckets left out, deal with those first. The trap works best as part of an overall approach to reducing the mosquito population on your property, not as a standalone fix for a breeding ground you've left untouched. This is the integrated thinking of the old farm homestead. You don't just treat the symptom, you address the conditions that created it. Purple martins, if you're lucky enough to attract them, will handle a significant portion of your mosquito population naturally. A martin house on the property, positioned in an open area with flight paths clear of trees, is one of the best long-term investments a rural homeowner can make. Bats are equally valuable. A single bat can consume several hundred mosquitoes in a single evening. The trap works with all of this, not instead of it. I want to spend some time here because this is where a lot of videos like this one lose me. The numbers get big, the claims get vague, and suddenly you're watching someone say their trap caught 10,000 mosquitoes, and you're not sure if you believe anything they've said. So let me be honest with you, in the way my grandfather would have expected me to be. In my first summer using this system, 3 traps, maintained every 2 weeks, placed at the spots I described, I counted roughly 1,100 mosquitoes caught across the full season. I know that because I actually counted them when I emptied the traps. Some refills caught more, some caught less. The placements near the low ground by the garden consistently outperformed the others. More importantly, and this is harder to quantify but easier to feel, the evenings on the porch changed. Not perfectly. We still used long sleeves some evenings. We still had mosquitoes, but the density dropped in a way that was noticeable and real. The kids could play in the yard for longer. The dogs stopped scratching as much. The quality of those quiet evening hours improved, and that's worth something that doesn't show up in any count. Did the trap eliminate mosquitoes from my property? No. Nothing will, short of a hard frost. Mosquitoes are one of the most adaptable and successful creatures on this planet. They have been here for over 100 million years. They are not going anywhere. But reducing their population near your living areas by a meaningful amount, using nothing but kitchen ingredients in a recycled plastic bottle, while spending less in an entire season than one fast food lunch, that is an honest yield. That is real value. I also want to be clear, this trap is not better than professional-grade treatment for people who are dealing with disease risk, extreme infestation, or specific medical vulnerability. If you live in an area with high mosquito-borne illness rates, or if someone in your household has a health condition that makes mosquito exposure dangerous, please work with a professional. This is a household tool, not a medical intervention.
But for the vast majority of people watching this, people who just want to sit outside in the evening without being eaten alive, who want a natural and inexpensive option that doesn't involve spraying chemicals around their children and gardens, this works, honestly, practically, repeatedly.